Our guest of honor is here, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm Karen Pontius, and thanks for attending our La Plata Democrats Club Zoom meeting. The goal of the club is to bring together all Democrats from the most conservative to the most progressive to celebrate our shared values, appreciate who we are, and to work together to put more Dems in office. I'd like to acknowledge our club lunch sponsor, Albrecht and Albrecht Law Firm. They've been supporting this event for several years. So if you need legal help, they're here in the city. Think about Albrecht and Albrecht. Today we'll hear from the new CEO. It's actually not new, right? 6 months or
6 months, yeah.
Of La Plata Electric Association, Chris Hansen. Right now, the election for board directors is underway. The ballots are out, and the deadline to return them is 4 p.m. on May 20th. I put that in the chat. So this year you can vote online at lpea.coop, and their annual meeting. I mute my phone and yet it comes through on the computer. So I don't know how to stop that. Where was I? The annual meeting is May 21st. So I hope everybody can come to that. I'll intro Chris and then we'll ask a few questions, and then audience, please put your question in the chat. As we go along, it might get answered, so we'll see. Everyone's asked to stay muted except for the speaker and myself. If you want to submit a question different from the ones we're asking, use the chat feature. Don't unmute yourself and speak. Just send your questions to everyone in the chat window. If you're having trouble with internet connectivity, you may want to disable your video. Audio only works better on slow connections. This Zoom meeting's being recorded. It'll be available within a day or so for viewing on our YouTube channel. So just put La Plata Democrats in the YouTube search bar and you will find all our little, all our videos. If you want a larger video of the person speaking, choose speaker mode, click on the upper right corner in your box on the 3 dots. And I would like to encourage everyone to donate to the Dems in these times because we want to accumulate funds ahead of the need for the next election. Monthly donations are particularly appreciated, and you can set those up on ActBlue. Monthly donations make it easier for you to give to the party with relatively little pain. Check on the Dems website to see what our next club meeting will be. It was going to be Marsha Porter Norton, but she had to postpone, so she'll be July. If you have any announcements, enter something in the chat window and we'll recognize it at the end of the session. So let me get down to introducing Chris Hansen. He's been CEO of LPA since last November. His energy industry background, vision for the future of electric utilities, and understanding of emerging opportunities is part of why he was selected. And then I'm going to put the rest of, he's got quite a bio in education, which I'm fascinated by. And then he went into state service. Here is my next piece there. He's been a House rep since 2016, and in 2020 became a Colorado state senator. He's executive director for Institute for Western Energy, and co-founder and director of Colorado Science and Engineering Policy Fellowship. Are you still doing that, Chris?
Yeah, still involved. Yep.
Amazing that you're doing all that stuff. So I'm going to put your, you have a little Meet Chris website that I found, and I put that in the chat. All right, let me make you a host, and you can share your screen.
Okay.
And also, you're going to have to let in other people if they come.
All right. Sounds good. No problem. I'm going to just use a few slides here to do a quick introduction, and a really big thank you for inviting me. I'm doing a variety of different community events around La Plata Electric service territory, and so appreciate you including me in this series that you do monthly. And yeah, excited to introduce myself and give you an update on what's going on at LPEA. So thanks for having me. I've got just my plan is to run through, maybe 15 or 20 minutes maximum of some prepared material, give you a sense of the big highlights of what's going on at your co-op. And then most importantly, looking forward to the conversation and happy to answer any questions that folks have today. I always start with the most important thing in my life, which here's a picture of my incredible family. My wife, Olka, my two boys, Ashwin and Sachin. Sachin is just about ready to graduate from high school, and my youngest, Ashwin, is over in Tokyo right now doing a semester abroad during his sophomore year of high school. So lots of moving parts for the Hansen family right now as we finish our move to Durango from East Denver. A little bit about my background. Here's kind of my journey academically, or as I sometimes refer to it as my misspent 20s reading books. I started off as a nuclear engineer at K-State, got really involved in student government and student politics there, served as student body president during my junior year at K-State, and really got to know state government and lobbied on behalf of K-State in Topeka at the state capitol. Kind of piqued my interest in state level government. Then from there, went to South Africa, moved to Johannesburg, where I studied engineering at the University of Witwatersrand, and got to meet Nelson Mandela when I was there in 1999, which was pretty incredible. A very memorable experience, as you can imagine. And then in 2002, graduated from MIT, did a systems engineering degree there. Studying the electricity system of Eastern China was my focus of my research, and how to improve efficiency and environmental performance of their power grid. And then in 2008, finished my PhD at the University of Oxford over in the UK, where I was focused in on a very similar topic, but in this case, the Western power grid of India, which is a great conversation and killer at any cocktail party when someone asks you what your dissertation is on. That was not a very popular topic, but something I loved researching, and I lived in India for a long time, working on my PhD work. Again, looking at electricity system planning and how to improve performance in the context of Gujarat state in India. Finished up with my PhD and my graduate school work, and we moved to Boston, where my wife started law school, and I started work in the private sector in 2005, working at IHS CIRA. That then became part of S&P. So I had 10 years in the private sector where I had a chance to work on corporate strategy. I did energy system planning projects all over the world, Dubai, New Zealand, back to India, spent some time in exotic Michigan. So kind of all over the place working on different consulting projects and energy system planning as part of my time in the private sector, and then transferred to the headquarters in Denver in 2010, where I joined the corporate strategy group and worked on corporate transactions and corporate planning. That was a really amazing period to be working for the CEO and in the corporate function there. I learned a lot about corporate finance and how to handle financial planning and those types of disciplines. I had in 2015 what I sometimes refer to as my burn the ships moment, where I left my private sector job and, just like Barbara McLaughlin, started campaigning for the state house, and joined Barbara on my first day in the Capitol in January of 2017 as we started our service in the Colorado House together. Barbara, if I remember correctly, you were one seat behind me on the House floor. So had 3 great years in the Colorado House with Barbara, and then 5 more as I served in the Colorado Senate representing East Denver. Served on the Joint Budget Committee, a chair of approps, finance, transportation and energy committees. So a lot of really fun work. Passed about 300 bills in my 8 years at the Colorado Capitol. So wonderful, basically 10 years in politics, working on policy and working to improve everybody's lives here in the state of Colorado. So really proud of that time in public service. But that brings me to today, which is a lot of change happening in the electric power industry. And I'm so honored to have been selected by LPEA's board to come and lead this great company, this great co-op, and help to deliver great value for all the members in Archuleta and La Plata counties. This is a picture of our facility at Sunnyside, just south of Durango. This is a 2 megawatt solar installation, kind of gives you a sense of the size and scope. We are looking at doing additional solar in the service territory over time, and this project, I think, has been really successful. We sell a big portion of this power to affordable housing projects in a partnership with La Plata County. So a lot of wins for our membership coming out of projects like this one at Sunnyside. But always good to have a quote from the founding fathers, in this case, Bob Dylan. There's nothing so stable as change, and that is exactly what we're seeing in the utility industry right now as we tackle the big challenges in our economy and for our membership. For me, why come to LPEA? Well, I left the Senate early to come and be a part of this great co-op, and I did it for a number of reasons. One, very committed to improving our energy sector and improving the environmental performance of our energy sector. And there's a huge amount of upside for our county, for our region, in doing a better job with the electricity sector. And it's also a chance for our co-op to be a national leader. And that's what really got me excited about joining LPEA. And so this pie chart is a snapshot of greenhouse gas emissions in Colorado. You can kind of see the different sectors where they come from. The largest is transportation, but right behind that is electricity. And so the great news is the better and better job we do of reducing emissions in the electricity sector, that gives us incredible leverage to reduce the emissions in the other sectors. And you can imagine if you're switching to an electric vehicle or you're switching to an electric heat pump, instead of a device that burns the fossil fuel like an internal combustion engine or a gas furnace, you are lowering emissions and improving your efficiency. But that is doubly the case if you're doing it with electrons that are created or generated without burning fossil fuels themselves. And so that's why the electric industry is such a linchpin or a keystone of this entire effort to improve our environmental performance. And that's really what makes me so excited to work in this industry. Here's a snapshot of the power grid of the state of Colorado. All the black lines are existing transmission lines, and the colored lines on this map are places where we need more transmission, where new projects are needed. And you can see a few of those dots in our corner of the state. But what is very clear is that if we're going to have a modern economy that can keep up with all of this new electric demand, we're going to need a better transmission system. And that is certainly the case in the Western United States. You can see on this map, the Western US, which is a unified grid from basically Colorado to the Pacific Ocean, has 37 different coordinating functions, different subgrids within the Western grid. And that leads to lots of coordination problems and lots of inefficiency. And so one of the things I've been very committed to in my time at the state government, in my time working with regional leaders, and now in my time of leading La Plata Electric, is to make sure that we can access regional markets. And that's exactly what we plan to do as part of our operations at La Plata Electric. This map gives you a kind of a nice idea of the scale of the challenge. The blue areas, lots of great wind potential. The yellow areas, lots of solar potential. And super good for Colorado, we've got lots of purple areas where you have both great wind and great solar. And so these are huge opportunities for us to improve our performance in the electricity grid. But you can see a fundamental problem. We don't have enough transmission where all these great resources are located. So that's one of the things we're working hard on at La Plata Electric, is how can we get more interconnection into the Four Corners area, particularly just west of Farmington. That then gives us access to the regional grid, sometimes referred to as the RTO, Regional Transmission Organization. And that is going to open up lots of new opportunities and low-cost options for our members. So we will be joining SPP, it's called, Southwest Power Pool West, on April 1st of 2026. And in doing so, give ourselves lots of additional opportunities to buy clean energy, to buy low-cost energy. And that, I think, is going to deliver great value for the membership. What's one way to think about cost? Well, this is a chart that has been put together by an investment firm in New York. It's called Lazard. It's not from a nonprofit. It's not from an advocacy group. It's just a compilation of recent contracted prices for different types of technologies. A lot of information on this graph, but what I wanted to point out are a couple of important trends. One, solar and wind prices continue to come down on average over the last 15 years, and you can see that playing out across this chart. The other thing we're seeing, though, is increased costs for things like coal power and nuclear power, and those have become very high-cost sources of electricity in the US, and you can kind of see that on this chart as well. And so we're in the middle of a very important process at La Plata Electric right now of going out to the market and seeing what additional power sources we can buy as we go into the 2030s and to continue to create low-cost options for our members. And this chart is kind of a starting point for that. This gives us the latest market data on how much different technologies cost. Now, keep in mind, this chart reflects the cost of this power without any subsidies. So this doesn't include any tax credits or any subsidies that different types of generation receive under current policy or future policy. This is the basic economic cost to deliver power from each of these different sources. So this is a great starting point for us as we consider what new things we can add to our system in La Plata Electric's territory. All right, I want to talk a little bit more about what I see happening on the transportation side. So this is kind of my opinion of different industry trends. This isn't meant to represent, a certain outlook from La Plata Electric, but just a compilation of work that I've done over the last decade on the trends in transportation. This is essentially what I see happening to gasoline fuel vehicles over the course of the next couple of decades. We're going to be using less and less gasoline and diesel engines when it comes to transportation. That means we're going to be replacing it with things like electric vehicles and hybrids. And we're seeing that trend play out both in the US and across the globe, where sales of EVs have continued to climb year after year as a result of improved technology and improved cost and performance. Now, I'm going to boldly predict that across the globe, we're going to see a crossover point here of vehicle miles traveled by EVs. I think we'll start to surpass gas engines by about 2030, 2031. We can have a great discussion on the slope of these lines, or is that too fast or too slow? But just for a thought experiment, let's assume that these trends hold and we start to see that crossover point as we get to the end of the decade. But interestingly, I think what happens soon after that is we start to move to a world with a lot more autonomy. So these are autonomous electric vehicles, and by the end of the 2030s, I think we see those types of technologies dominating the market. And that, I think, is going to be true in both rural and urban areas. And the great news here is that the overall price of traveling a mile in a car is going to come down significantly because of this new technology. Right now, if you were to buy a new mid-sized sedan, just pick one, a Toyota Camry, it's going to cost you about 60 cents a mile to drive that car. So for gasoline, for oil changes, for maintenance, for capital depreciation, to pay for the car, add that all up, divide by about 150,000 miles for the life of that car, and it comes out to about 60 cents roughly. The good news is for EVs and autonomous electric vehicles in particular, those costs are going to come down below 25 cents. And so we think that this trend is going to continue because of the cost and performance of the technology. And as leadership of La Plata Electric, we're trying to plan ahead for this. We're going to see more and more demand from people for charging electric vehicles, for other types of beneficial electrification, where people switch over to heat pumps, et cetera. And so that's really what we're trying to plan for and be ready for as your co-op. So where is LPEA headed? Well, let's dig into that a little bit. Our starting point in 2025, we are about 50,000 meters across about 37,000 members. We do fire mitigation across the entire service territory. That's obviously a huge priority for us as we go into the summer fire season. I'm certainly thankful for this recent rain that we've had, as I'm sure you all are. That's something that's been really positive as far as reducing fire risk, but there's no doubt we're going to have hot, dry days over the summer and a big chance of fire issues in the Western Slope, and we're trying to make sure we're ready for that. So we spend a lot of time and energy and money making sure that we're reducing fire risk as much as we possibly can on behalf of our members. It also means maintaining 40,000 poles and thousands of miles of electric infrastructure across our service territory. As I said, La Plata, Archuleta, and portions of Hinsdale, Mineral, and San Juan counties all included in our service territory. And we need to, of course, manage and maintain a sustainable, reliable electricity supply for all of our members. And that, is our safety is our number one priority. And right behind that is making sure we've got reliable and affordable supplies. So that's what we're dedicated to at LPEA, and doing it in a way that really delivers great value and great performance for all of our members. And the great news is we're a nonprofit corporation. We don't need to create margin for our shareholders like an Excel or an investor-owned utility. We are a nonprofit. We have just high enough margins to pay for next year's maintenance, essentially. That's how we operate, and any extra money we bring in, we return to our members through things like capital credits over time. So this is a really great model, and you should all be, I think, so happy to be part of a co-op because of the great business model it is for our members. All right, let's talk a little bit about the long-term vision. I've alluded to this a little bit in my previous remarks, but we're seeing increased energy demands from AI, from data centers, from electric vehicles, from other energy-intensive innovations like electrifying upstream oil and gas, for example, where they switch over to using electricity for their operations. So all of these things are things we have to get ready for and plan ahead for at La Plata Electric. We're also making sure we're ready for organic membership growth, more housing, more people moving into our area. We've all seen the growth over the last 5 years in both La Plata and Archuleta, and we're expecting that to continue and evolve. And we want to make sure we're ready for those demands. We're also doing a lot of promotion of beneficial electrification. So helping our members switch to energy efficient and electrified solutions. That helps improve environmental performance and helps our members lower their costs over the long term. So that's an important part of what we do as your co-op. And then, as I mentioned before, we got to make sure we're tied in with enough capacity into the regional transmission grid to make sure we can get supply, and several scenarios where we're going to be selling supply to our neighbors. And so being able to trade electricity really creates a lot of additional resiliency and reliability across our whole membership. 2025 is a critical year for us. The board hired me with some very clear goals, and my job is to guide the team to deliver on these key focus areas. So securing our energy supply, ensuring reliability and resiliency, meeting our targets that we've set as a co-op, and continuing to advance our cooperative growth. And that's exactly what we're doing as we prepare for our exit from our long-term contract with Tri-State. That will happen on April 1st, 2026, based on a decision that the board made in early 2024. And so we are making sure we're ready for that. And the great news to share with everyone is we've got our power supply all locked up to 2028, and we're in a great position to work through this transition. In fact, our blended cost of power is actually going to come down by about 10% starting on April 1st, 2026. So I think a really great set of deliverables that we have out of the gate, and we're continuing to work hard to make sure that this is a very smooth transition for La Plata Electric and our members. So what does the road ahead look like? Well, to give you some detail on that, right now we're working on a RFP, or request for proposals, to build more generation locally, to access more regional power supplies. We think that is a huge win-win for our members, to invest in ourselves, to really max out the amount that we can produce locally and get new jobs, new economic growth, new property tax revenues to support public infrastructure. All those benefits come with doing more local generation. And that was one of the, I think, big reasons that the board decided to change our power supply arrangement, was so that we could have more flexibility and do more local generation. We're going to be starting into the bridge period with our power broker arrangement with Mercuria. They basically help us to secure power supply from April of 26 into 2028. So that's going to be kicking off on April 1st of next year. And again, we're getting really great pricing as we assemble all those different parts to our power supply agreements. Another portion of that is doing some power purchase agreements directly with Tri-State. So we'll be buying about 40 megawatts of their output from the Dolores Canyon Solar Facility, which is just near Cajon and next door in Montezuma County. So really great to be partnering with our neighbors to the west. And then as we look into the future, be continuing to develop more local generation projects like we did at Sunnyside, and have a diversified set of power purchase agreements as we go into the late 2020s. So lots of work ahead, but some great things already in motion and secured for our membership. All right, just a couple more slides to share with you, and then really looking forward to the conversation today. Pleased to announce we just received a $2 million grant from the Department of Energy through the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, or DOLA. This is going to help us build a 5 megawatt or 20 megawatt hour system that's going to really help support grid reliability and our opportunity to buy power off peak and then deliver that to our members on peak. So the batteries are a really great asset, increases reliability and resilience, and helps us integrate more renewables over time. So that was a great piece of news that we received a couple of weeks ago, and so I wanted to share that with you today. And it's going to help us through the microgrid community resilience program and from the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed in 2021, 2022. So some really great news to share on that front, and we're continuing to pursue federal and state grants that can really help us to do this work together. The last thing I want to mention is I'm just back from the nation's capital, where I had a chance to meet with Representative Hurd, Senator Hickenlooper, Senator Bennett, really the entire congressional delegation in DC, where we stressed a couple of key points around making sure that we're not losing key personnel in places like WAPA and BPA, which are the federal power authorities. Also let them know about the severity of the cuts at places like the Forest Service, affecting our ability to get work done and to do fire mitigation. So some really important near-term problems that are being created by some of the cuts that have been made. And we also had a chance to talk about the Fix Our Forest Act, which is being heavily debated right now in Washington. Senator Hickenlooper is one of the sponsors of that bill in the Senate. And that's something that is really important for us to get right so that we can do a better job of fire mitigation, particularly in our national forests and BLM land. So a lot of great work happening right now, important time to be there in Washington, and did my very best to represent La Plata Electric in front of our congressional delegation, both in Colorado, but then also regionally with our neighboring states. So productive set of meetings last week from Monday to Wednesday when I was in DC. So I'd like to end on a picture of a good chunk of the staff here. This was taken last year in our yard in Bodo Park. We're working hard every day for our membership, and just want to say Ben, a big thank you for inviting me to be a part of this meeting and to be able to give you a sense of kind of our top priorities in our work at La Plata Electric, and really looking forward to your questions. Let me end on this slide. This is a reminder that Karen mentioned, but we've got voting happening right now for the 4 districts across our territory, each with contested election for directors of La Plata Electric. And here are the deadlines. Please make sure you get your vote in. You can vote online until May 20th or vote by mail up until May 20th. And then we do have one final opportunity during our annual meeting to vote on May 21st, which will be hosted here at our headquarters in Bodo Park. To be clear, LPA does not get involved in the elections other than to administer them. If you need to drop off your ballots, you can do so at either our Pagosa or Durango offices. But we are certainly not involved in any way with candidates as far as endorsement, just making sure people understand the logistics and the administration of the vote. So thanks again for having me. And yeah, looking forward to our conversation.
My computer quit. My iMac is telling me it's at the end of days, I guess. I don't know, it's been a week. So Q&A. So the Q's in here. I don't know how to work this. So.
Okay.
All right. So there's a lot of interest about the exit from Tri-State. What can you share with people about how, I know it starts next April, so that's coming up quick than we think. And they all want to know how much. So I'm not sure what you can share.
Yeah,
how much is costing and here's that.
Yeah, no problem. Very happy to answer that question. So yeah, as I said, the board voted in March of 2024 to leave our contract with our wholesale power supplier, Tri-State. That requires a 2-year period of exit. And so that's why the agreement will be in effect from April 1st, 2026, but was legally binding since last year. We have now moved forward with our power supply contracts, including a power purchase agreement with Tri-State for some of the power from their facilities. But as far as the costs, the contract termination payment, we kind of refer to it by its acronym, the CTP, really has 3 main parts. So part 1 is we have to pay for the debt that was incurred on our behalf during our time inside of Tri-State's membership group. Our portion of that approximately $2 billion worth of debt, which they currently, $3 billion of debt that they currently have on their books, is about $160 million. We're going to do a final calculation of that early next year, and then that will help finalize the payment amount. But it's approximately $160 million. So that's part number one. That is debt, which we are already responsible for. We'd have to pay for that if we stayed in Tri-State, or we have to pay for it if we leave Tri-State. And so that's really where that portion of the payment comes from. The second portion of the payment is approximately $70 million, and that is for transmission services for which we already use and will continue to use. So we're simply continuing to pay for transmission, which we need to access the regional grid. So again, that would be money we would owe if we stay. That is money we owe if we go. That comes to about $70 million approximately. And then the third piece of the transaction is us taking advantage of the capital credits, which we have with Tri-State. That comes to just shy of $50 million. So that is credit that we get off of our payment. So if you think about it as 160 plus 70 minus 50, we're going to need to make a payment of about $165 million roughly. Again, it will be finalized in the coming months. But that essentially is what we need to do to end our contract and to go and pursue our own independent path when it comes to power supply. Now, keep in mind that allows us to now do a lot of local generation to access the regional market. I see a question here in the chat about the RTO and how we access the grid. That is, to me, a really great advantage of this decision that the board has made, is that we can access those regional supplies at the very lowest cost. And I see a lot of advantage for the membership in doing that. The question that I think Ann asked about hacking, we are vigilant every day against cyber attack and different types of hacking. That is true today, and that will be true tomorrow as we enter into the grid. I think the good news is, as we enter into an RTO, there are a lot of additional resources around cybersecurity that SPP, which is the nonprofit company that runs the RTO, brings to the party. So they're going to be adding an extra layer of security to reduce the risk of hacking. Is that risk zero? Absolutely not. That is always a problem that we are worried about. But it's something that we're going to be putting a lot of time and energy to make sure we don't have any disruptions.
I'd like to make one point about the contract before you leave that subject.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know when exactly, but they signed a contract until 2050.
Well, that's right. So our current contract, which again ends on April 1st of 2026, the original date for that was all the way through 2050. And Tri-State right now is asking all of its members to sign up for another 16-year extension. And so, for instance, Empire Electric, they have signed on to 2066. So, yeah, those were the terms that we were under before the board made the decision.
Yeah, I just think that's so. There's so much innovation happening that'll be different. Werner has a question. Are you planning for other electricity generation besides PV, photovoltaics? With tariffs, where would the solar panels stand?
Yeah, it's a great question, Werner, and great to see you again. The short answer is yes. We are absolutely looking at all of the above options, and we have an RFP right now where we're getting bids coming in on all different types of generation sources. We're looking at geothermal and wind and solar and batteries and gas peaking plants and carbon sequestration opportunities, really everything under the sun. We are taking a look at to see what the cost looks like, what the performance looks like. Can the company that's proposing them deliver on the time scale that we need, right? All these different factors that go into evaluating new project proposals. So that's what we're doing over the course of the summer with our RFP process. Looking at lots of different options. We think there are some good opportunities locally to do more PV, but we're also talking to Vallecito folks about the hydro facility and buying that power from that generation option. So really looking at cost, performance, and matching up all the different options to assemble the very best portfolio for our members. And therein lies, I think, a great opportunity for Southwest Colorado.
Great. Barbara McLaughlin asked why, and she meant what? What new and innovative ideas are bubbling up to the top to save energy?
All right, I can't believe an English teacher had a typo. Yeah, Barbara, thanks
I
for the
blame my
question.
fingers, not my brain.
That's it. Yeah, so there's a lot of innovation happening right now. I mean, that's why I started with the Bob Dylan quote, because things are changing so rapidly. We're seeing, the price of batteries, for instance, dropping 10 to 15% a year. The price of solar and wind has come down a lot over the last 15 years. The price of geothermal looks like it's going to be improving a lot in the near future. And so, yeah, just huge opportunities. Heat pumps have improved tremendously. I mean, I hope folks, as your furnace gets to end of life, please consider electrifying your homes, because it will save you a ton of money over time to use these new efficient technologies. Heat pumps, hot water heater, heat pumps, induction ranges, lots of incredible new technology that just gets better and better every single year. And so, that's what we're really trying to do, is support our members in electrifying and making sure we've got good power available to supply those new devices. So that's where a lot of new innovation is coming from. But we're also seeing some really incredible things on what's called virtual power plants, where we can put lots of these devices together, like batteries that are in people's garages, for example, and assemble those in a way that can really help support grid reliability across the system, right? Tons of really cool technology that's coming about. I know lots of you have smart thermostats, right? That's kind of like version 1. And we are now implementing version 2 and 3 and 4 of all these new great technologies that will make the system more reliable and cheaper for customers. So yeah, those are things that are top of mind for us as we do this work. All right, I think we might have had our host get frozen.
We asked, what do you predict from tariffs, the impacts of tariffs?
Which there we go. Now I can hear.
Really protect.
Yeah. So,
and how can we protect and make use? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Tariffs are a very serious concern right now. And to give everybody an example, we are needing to build some new substations in Archuleta, in La Plata County, to make sure we can continue to serve people in a really reliable way, and especially as load grows in both counties. And it is taking us about 2 to 3 years to get transformers, right? Those big gray pieces of equipment that you need to have a reliable electricity system at the substation at the local level. Long lead times. And now there's a bit of insult to injury, because the tariffs have come in, and we immediately got a letter from our transformer supplier that the costs are going to go up 25% because of the tariffs. And one of the interesting things that's happened over the last 25 years in the wake of the NAFTA agreements is that these supply chains have become across the globe, but also very much across North America. And so as we put tariffs on Canada and Mexico, it's had this huge impact on supply of electricity infrastructure, equipment. So transformers, breakers, wires, et cetera, switches, all of these things now 20+% more expensive than they were a few months ago. That's on top of the inflationary pressures and supply chain problems that we were having post-COVID. So yeah, lots of pressure here. One of the major factors for us in having to have a discussion about increased rates that just went into effect in April is we needed to respond to high inflation and cost pressure. And unfortunately, we're seeing that continue. And we're trying hard, of course, to control costs, drive down costs where we can, like with what we accomplished on the wholesale electricity side. But the pressure on transformers and other things subject to tariffs have not gone away. In fact, they've just gotten worse. So it's tough right now, keeping up with those cost pressures, and running an electric utility.
Banner asked, how reliable are the transmission lines? You showed a map earlier, and what's the difference between the dark gray and the light gray? Does that have to do with heavy duty or less duty?
Yeah, that's right. So the thicker the line on that map that I showed, the bigger the line. So, the lines you see around our territory are mostly lower voltage, 69 or 115 kilovolts are typically what you see around La Plata County. We do have one big line that comes into the Hesperus area that's a 345 kV. That's part of the tri-state system. Those are kind of the big towers that you might notice in some different parts of our territory. So yeah, the thicker the line on that map, the bigger the capacity. And one of the things we're evaluating is, could we upgrade existing lines? So take a 115 line and upgrade it to 200 or 300 kilovolt service. That's faster and cheaper than building a brand new line. So those are all the options we're looking at right now. And as the demand for electricity continues to increase, we've got to be ready for that. And that means upgrading the grid over time. And you're seeing us do that right now, actually, from Bayfield to Pagosa, for example. There's construction. You may have noticed over the summer, over the last 6 months, we were doing construction north of Durango on 550. New lines being upgraded along our north-south corridor in La Plata County. So we're always trying to, stay ahead of the curve and make sure we've got a reliable system. And that means upgrading our transmission lines.
Excellent.
All right. I can very happily take the questions straight from the chat if folks would like me to, because I think we just lost our host there
I
for a
think that's a
second.
really good idea. Chris, why don't
Okay.
you just jump on in?
All right, sounds good. I see another project here around rooftop solar. We have had a few parts of the territory, particularly in the north side of Durango, where we've kind of maxed out our current capacity to take more rooftop solar. We have figured out some new solutions to enable that to restart. So asking customers to add battery storage or add some interruptible inverters that help us manage that capacity. And so our whole philosophy is to say yes every time somebody asks if they can do rooftop solar. That is always going to be our answer. It's just that sometimes it might be yes, and we need some storage capacity or some interruptibility for some hours during the year to manage the amount of energy that's being fed into the local grid in your particular neighborhood or area. But it's a pretty isolated problem in just a few parts of our territory. And by the end of 2025, early 26, I think we'll have that largely solved with some of these new storage solutions that we're bringing in. So that's really good news, I think, for rooftop solar. John Witchell asks, what does success look like 3 to 5 years from now for LPA? And what are the biggest risks and barriers to achieve that success? Well, John is obviously an integral part of this as a board member. He's been working hard on answering this question as well. But this was something that I really tried to tackle as I talked to the board about my application for this job back in October of last year. I think success looks like a safe, reliable, and affordable system and continual improvement on our environmental performance. And we have a very clear target that we have to meet as per state law to get 80% carbon-free electricity by the end of the decade. We are on track to meet that. We are going to get there, I think, in advance of the deadline. And I think we're going to actually exceed the target by the time we get to 2030. So that's great news. And we're doing it in a way that we're really going to work to minimize cost for the members. Now, that's not to say we're going to have costs are going down across the system, because as we talked about, right, there's a lot of inflation in transformers and equipment. Labor costs, of course, continue to go up because of inflation. We have to pay our incredible line workers good wages to get great employees. So all of that still is at play, but we are absolutely focused on high reliability, 100% safety record, and delivering great value for our members. The one thing I would add to this, though, the kind of 3 to 5 year outlook, is that we have more costs now associated with fire mitigation. We're super worried about fire. We know how dry it is overall, not today, but in general, in La Plata and Archuleta. And, we're spending more money now on fire mitigation. A few years ago, 2020, 2022, it was about $5 million a year on fire mitigation. And that has increased. We're going to be spending closer to $9 million this year. And so that's a cost that we have to watch really carefully and make sure we're getting great results. So those are all the things that are kind of top of mind for me as I think about the next 3 to 5 years. And we've got an amazing team here at LPEA, and get to work with incredible professionals. And yeah, we're going to make sure we achieve those targets. All right. I see a question from Ann here about rooftop solar and storage and any reimbursement for storage. And the answer is yes. We have a great incentive program for LPE members who are willing and able to add storage to their homes or businesses. And we've got a great incentive program on top of the other state and federal incentives that are in place for battery storage. So please take a look at our website. You can see all the details of that program that people can take advantage of. That is in addition to all the other things we're doing to support heat pumps and EV charging and all the other things that we do for businesses and homes to really help people become more efficient and lower their costs over time. So that's what we're doing on that front. And it seems like I got a similar question from Kirby on battery and storage. Barbara asks, what did Congressman Hurd say about the government's cut in fire mitigation?
He said that.
Yeah, Congressman Hurd is very concerned about that. That's what he expressed to me and to the group I was with. And he is working right now, through the House budget process. And he's trying to advocate for some of these key priorities as he sees it for our district. But what I would say to everybody on the line, like, we need to keep reaching out. We need to let him know. My reason for being in DC was to do exactly that. Let him know how critical the folks that work at the Forest Service are for our ability to reduce fire risk, and really communicated that loud and clear. And what I found out yesterday is that our local office here in Durango is down 30 to 35%. It is a giant cut to the personnel that we need to do this important work. So we got to keep making sure our representatives in Congress know how vital that is, and hopefully to start reversing some of those cuts that are so damaging.
I have a question about microgrids, and I know you worked in China and India, and I remember seeing things about microgrids in India a long time ago.
Yeah.
We're in the mobile home park co-op just at the north end of the service area in the north end of Durango. Our house has electric. We don't have a battery yet. That's our last piece. So
Okay.
We'll probably be looking into that. But I think our co-op would be a great opportunity for a microgrid if you want to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, I would love to talk to your co-op folks about that. We are doing some microgrids now in the territory, and working, to implement those in some key areas. Microgrids work particularly well when you've got a kind of a smaller, medium-sized load at the end of a long line, because of course you're worried about one line going down and people getting cut off for a long period of time. And that's where microgrids can really provide a lot of resiliency. And so, yeah, we're looking at, we've got plenty of those kinds of situations in La Plata and Archuleta, and really trying to prioritize those areas first, as opposed to places that are closer to town where we've got multiple lines coming into a neighborhood. And so, yeah, just to kind of let you know how we're trying to prioritize that work.
Oh, okay. I get it. We're probably not at the end of a long line.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, always great to do more microgrids. We're excited about that, but trying to make sure we do them in the highest risk places first.
If you were able to appoint board members, what qualities or let me see what I got here. What qualifications or qualities would you seek in the board members?
Yes,
we have a great group.
As their employee, I will probably not answer that question because I don't get to appoint board members. The great members and therefore voters of La Plata Electric get to do that, and of course we're in that democratic process right now. So if I advocate for anything, it's for people to get involved, learn about the candidates, reach out and contact the candidates, find out what their positions are. I think there's very big differences in the folks running. They have very different priorities that they're running on, and be an informed voter, just like we'd ask people to be informed in voting for Congress or for president or for state rep. like Rep. McLaughlin, become informed and get engaged. And, the same thing is true here for La Plata Electric Co-op board directors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. You learned a lot in politics, in state politics. That's a good answer. Any talk of a distributed battery system?
Well, absolutely. In fact, that's kind of what I was describing, is trying to encourage members to add batteries at the home or business level. We're going to do the same thing. I've shared with you the announcement of the larger size battery that we're going to install at one of our substations, and they're a great 1-2 punch. Distributed batteries plus grid scale batteries acting in concert just have huge value in reducing energy costs and increasing reliability. So yeah, we're going to keep doing that. And as battery prices fall, that will just get easier and easier for everybody.
That's the end of the questions that I had. Do you have any more things to tell us as a closing?
Well, just to say again, thanks for having me. I'm doing lots of community events, Kiwanis clubs, Rotaries. I went to the Oxford Grange. I'm going to be heading out to Breen in a couple of weeks. Just really trying to connect with people, get questions answered, make sure folks know, what's going on at their co-op and the work that we're doing on their behalf. And, of course, encourage everybody to make sure they vote in the elections. So thanks so much for having me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious as to what the salary range is people are accusing you of getting.
Barbara, I've heard just about everything.
I know.
Yeah, my salary is public record. I have told everybody what my salary is. I'm actually getting paid less than my predecessor, who was CEO. Many of you probably met Jessica while she was here. But yeah, that's public record. Nothing to hide.
I think it's kind of funny. So.
Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah. Transparency has been a big pushback, like as if LPEA isn't transparent enough. And I know you going around to talking to different areas is really helping with that. I hope. I don't
hope
even
so too.
know what. Yeah. And this video will help too once it gets out.
Yeah, we're working hard to get information out and communicate clearly and through multiple channels. Digital, paper, TV, radio. I mean, we're trying to use everything to make sure folks know what's going on, and do an occasional column in the Herald, and just doing our best. And our annual report is about ready to be published. We publish it every single year. It has our audited financials. We just got our audit back. It came back completely clean. There's no audit issues, right? So I think set a very high bar for transparency. And we will continue to do that, putting out lots of information every single day about the operations and making sure members get their questions answered.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Great on the audit. It's a great co-op, and I'm really glad you're here. And thank you so much. And as the host, I think you have the opportunity to make sure it's recorded. There's some button on there. Well, thank you so much for hosting this.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you.
Thanks.